Okay, everybody, welcome back to the channel. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Nate. I'm a developmental behavioral pediatrician, clinical geneticist, and if you're watching this video, either you or someone you know and love is on a wait list like mine. And I'd like to give you a few tips and strategies as it relates to ADHD so I can save you a 9-month wait. All right, so if you watched the last video, we talked about the first and most important question as it relates to ADHD is impairment. If you're not impaired, okay, if your life isn't terrible, if it's not, in essence, a dumpster fire, it's probably not worth manipulating the neurochemistry of your child's brain or waiting on a wait list to determine if that is a necessary intervention. So many people say to me, Noble, why we got to do, too many kids are on medicines, we don't know how they work, we don't know what they do, just big pharma, blah, blah, blah. I don't want my kid a zombie. We're going to talk about all these things. But I want to challenge and teach to one specific issue today, and that is how these medications work. Listen, if you're going to start a medicine for your child, you're going to put your child on a medicine, manipulate the neurochemistry of their brain, it's very important that you understand how these medicines work. When I was in college, I was part of a fraternity. One of the things we did at the fraternity was we had a party, a flagship party every year. And so my job was really to market and to recruit primarily individuals, men, women, for the party, because a good party in college, first and foremost, is defined by people. But we had a party, and the party was called Bungle in the Jungle. And this was a party where we would go out and you'd buy fabric at a store and you would like make yourself into like a caveman kind of outfit. And then you'd go to the party and that's what it was. But in order for us to have a good bungle in the jungle, my job was to recruit people to come and be at the party, to recruit bodies, okay? And as we begin the discussion about how these medications work, you have to understand that in this metaphor, the people that we're trying to recruit to the party, the men and women, the people from the community that we want to see in the house doing the dance party, you know, whatever it is, there's two people in this story that we're trying to recruit, one of which is dopamine. We're going to shorthand it as DA, dopamine. And the other person that we're trying to recruit to the party is NE, or norepinephrine. There's two neurotransmitters that are intimately involved in the treatment of ADHD. And these are neurotransmitters that are impacted directly by the use of stimulant medications, okay? Stimulant medications are what we're going to refer to as medications that are most effective in the treatment of ADHD. If you go to a provider's office, you wait the 9 months, you see somebody like me, the question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to treat my child with a medication that's going to work? If the answer is yes, you're talking about a medicine that's going to manipulate dopamine and norepinephrine. Let's get back to our metaphor. Now, my job as the fraternity president was to get people to the party, okay? And so I wanted to get as much dopamine and norepinephrine as possible. And the way you do that pharmacologically is you use medications, which I've alluded to earlier, called stimulants. Stimulants have lots of different names. Now, when I say stimulant, I mean the traditional ADHD medicines that you're thinking of. I mean Concerta and Ritalin and Adderall and Vyanse and Methylphenidate and Quillavant. I mean, we could do this game all day. But here's what you have to understand. In the realm of stimulants, there's really only two medicines. Okay, there's a million names. There's a million names. We're going to maybe talk about this in a different video. There's a million names, but there's really only two kinds. There's the methylphenidate kind, and there's the amphetamine kind, okay? And they both work similarly, and I'm going to try and pull out the differences. So, in your child's brain, think about it like Bungle in the Jungle. The medications are there to help recruit and kind of help to recruit dopamine and norepinephrine by pushing them into the synaptic cleft, okay? So they're going to take dopamine, and the medications work by increasing the production of dopamine. So dopamine production is going up, norepinephrine production is going up, and not only that, but it's being pushed into the synaptic cleft. Now this okay, the synaptic cleft between neurons is where the magic happens, right? When you get dopamine and norepinephrine being pushed out of the synaptic cleft and it's kind of doing its business, all right? So think about this area here between, neurons, the synaptic cleft area right here. Think about this as like the factory. This is where people go to work. This is, in the metaphor, the dance floor, right? This is the action, this is the activity, this is the stuff that's going on. You want dopamine and you want norepinephrine not only to be squeezed into the synaptic cleft, right? But you don't want them to leave too early, right? Nobody wants them to clock out. Hey, Noble, thanks a lot for the party, and I wish I could stay for the giant human, Lego whatever, but I gotta go because there's another party down the street, okay? So getting dopamine and norepinephrine into the synaptic cleft is one of the first jobs of a stimulant medication, right? So it pushes them in, pushes them in, pushes them in. But then what happens is your body wants to recycle. Your body wants to recycle these chemicals, so these neurotransmitters, so that it can do the process again. So your body takes the dopamine and the norepinephrine, and it recycles it, brings it back up the synaptic, up the kind of neuron chain, and to recycle it, and then push it back down and push it through. There's a bunch of pharmacology, a bunch of pharmacokinetics, a bunch of stuff I don't understand, that I'm skipping. I learned about it once, it didn't really help me. But okay, so I'm skipping that step. All right, but that's in general, what happens. So when you have ADHD, when you're a child, when someone has ADHD, okay, what happens is there's not enough dopamine and norepinephrine that's being pushed into the synaptic cleft. There's not enough people at the party. And when people do come to the party, they don't stay very long. Dopamine and norepinephrine hang out for a little bit and they're like, yeah, I gotta go. They take their beer and they're out of there, right? Now that's fine. That's fantastic, right? But think about your child. Think about the child that you have. Think about that beautiful, glorious cherub child that you have, that you love. Think about them. Right? This makes sense, right? Now, why can they play video games forever? Why do they sit and play video games forever? You're like, well, Noble, this doesn't make sense. Like, why on earth would they be able to sit and play video games for hours, but not be able to sit in school and listen, right? It seems like they've got plenty of dopamine and norepinephrine when they want it. Okay. When you're playing video games, right, and the screen changes every fraction of a second, bam, 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 change, 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 change. Think about how much dopamine and norepinephrine is getting squirted out and recycled, right? Because they're into this. They're focused. The scenes are changing. The recycling is happening, right? It's like in ADHD, it's like heaven for somebody with ADHD, because it's a new scenario constantly. It's constantly changing, right? It doesn't even necessarily follow a linear pattern when you're gaming. But in school, when you're sitting and listening, doing this thing, that's harder. That's a lot harder, okay? So we need them to follow the linear pattern, and they're running out of dopamine and norepinephrine almost immediately. So what do these medications do? First and foremost, they increase the excretion of dopamine and norepinephrine into the synaptic cleft. But then, when the medicines go to be when the neurotransmitters go to be recycled, when they go to be recycled, okay, oftentimes what happens is the medications make either a soft opposition towards it or a hard opposition towards it. Example, as I've said earlier, there are two kinds of medicines. Okay, MPH, those are methylphenidates, all right? Now we're going to talk about all those in another video. What do I mean by that? Doesn't matter right now. What you need to understand is that methylphenidates are traditionally, the flagship of methylphenidates is like Ritalin, okay? And Ritalin's the one that everyone hates and everyone's talking about, and blah, blah, blah. I like Ritalin. Not only have I used it in thousands of people, I've been on it, as you can probably guess by watching this video. Now listen, great medicine, very effective, very useful. Okay, been around a long time. We know exactly how this stuff works, okay? So methylphenidates, like Ritalin, Concerta, Quillavant, Daytrana, I mean, there's a bunch. I'm skipping a bunch. There's a bunch, okay? Those medicines work not only by increasing the presence of dopamine and norepinephrine in the synaptic cleft, they also make, we'll say a soft, I'm going to air quote this, a soft kind of opposition to people taking the dopamine and norepinephrine, taking their beer and leaving. They're saying, you know what, if you could just stick around, we're going to have a dance-off in a little bit. We're going to have a raffle drawing. We're going to do like some crazy hide-and-seek stuff. It's just going to be nuts. We've got a paper mache thing we're going to do. Like, yes, right? It's a soft, but you know what? If you want to leave, leave. Totally fine. Thank you for coming. You're fantastic. That's the methylphenidates. Increase the secretion all right? The presence of dopamine and norepinephrine, get more people at the party, and then try and keep them there as long as you can to do the work, right? To stay on the work floor, to stay on the dance floor for as long as possible, okay? But there's another group of medicines. The methylphenidates are over here, okay? I'm gonna erase dopamine and norepinephrine for a second. There's another group of medicines over here, and I'm gonna write AMP. These are the amphetamines. This is Adderall, this is Vyanse, these are dexedrine products. There's others, but those are the big ones, okay? Now, these medicines work very similarly, but why do I like methylphenidates more than amphetamines? I'm about to show you, okay? So amphetamines work the same way. So dopamine, norepinephrine get pushed into the synaptic cleft, but then when they go to take their beer and leave and go to the party down the street, well, amphetamines don't make a soft opposition towards leaving. What they do is they make I'm gonna call it a hard opposition. Okay, and what they do is, this is the fraternity party where you realize you really shouldn't be at. Not safe. Not a good vibe. Bunch of people with like really bent hat brims and like a bunch of chewing tobacco, you know, like in their lip. And they're just like arbitrarily spitting into a Mountain Dew bottle. And you're like surrounded by, and hey, no judgment. Okay, I'm just saying. Just to give you a picture, like, those people, maybe you're in a situation you don't want to be in, right? A bunch of people spitting in Mountain Dew bottles, doesn't feel good. You go to leave, you get your beer, you go up the steps, you're met with this giant dude, okay, with a really bent brim on his hat, maybe has like a fish hook in it. Again, no offense to fish hook people. And you're trying to get your Michelob Light and get out of there to go to the party down the street, and this person says to you, I don't think anybody's leaving today. What? Nope. We're staying in. And the dopamine and the norepinephrine keep coming in, okay? And people keep trying to leave, but they won't let it because they lock the doors. And eventually what happens to that house? The stinking roof blows off. Individuals on amphetamines. So again, Adderall, Vyanse, you know, these kinds of individuals, towards the end of the day, they can really come unglued. Because, you know, their amphetamine and dopamine, almost as if they blow the roof off their house. And as they come down off these medications, you can get really significant behaviors. Okay, so a lot of outburst behaviors. Whereas methylphenidates, you still have some outburst behavior, some irritability, right? Both of these represent flights, where you're going from one position to another spot on the map, and as you go to land that plane, the landing gear is broken. So both of these scenarios are gonna result in the skidding on the tarmac, okay? But with this scenario, there's a few more pillows, all right? There's a little bit more seatbelts. There's, you know, a few more refreshments. Over here, it's a sit down, shut up, and just hope that you make it. Idiot. Like, this is a little bit harsher, okay? I've been on all these medicines too, and I gotta tell you, I'm telling you the truth. These are a little bit harsher. Coming off these is hard, okay? Coming off these is a little easier, okay? That's just a real quick overview on how these medicines work and how you should understand them, okay? In the next video, we're gonna talk about the specifics of these medications, how you choose one over the other, but then also, you know, what do you need to understand about formulation, coverage, etc.